Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary, distinguished guests, welcome to Ridiculous, the Life of a Clown.
My name is Jill Weiss, and I am a solo performer, a playwright, a coach and director, an actor, and pretty much whatever else you want me to be.
So, we met when you were going to the Clown Conservatory at San Francisco Circus Center.
That's right.
And you studied clown for 1 year there, too?
1 year there. Were you in the year before me?
I believe so.
Yeah, so I was in the year after you. And then James Donlin and Leonard Pitt started the Flying Actors Studio, a movement, physicality, mime, year intensive program the very next year. So I did that for my second year.
So, clown, while it's part of your background, isn't your main performance output now.
No.
What drew you to clown in the first place?
You know, I think my idea of what a lot of artists go through is that there's like this process of trying to find it. I guess there are some performers that just, they found it right away when they were young. You know, when I was young, I was making people laugh. I mean, that was my primary defense mechanism and a way of making friends and keeping the family happy. But I was terrified in school to do any kind of performance stuff. So it wasn't until I got into an art school. I got a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute, the little one up in North Beach. So I went there when I was 18, and I started doing, dabbling a little bit in performance art. And I started seeing a therapist at the time because I was all messed up, you know, sensitive, neurotic artist. I still am. And the therapist said, "You are a storyteller. You are an actor. I don't know why you're pursuing this, you know, two-dimensional art. Like, you need to be performing." And so he really pushed me and pushed me and pushed me so much until finally I signed up for a film acting class, which is a funny place to start, I think, but that is where I started. And the film acting class, you know, I really loved learning about it, but I didn't feel like, you know, I auditioned a little, but I didn't really, I liked it, but it didn't feel like home to me, you know. And so from there, I studied improv, and improv felt pretty good to me, but there was still, you know, it still didn't feel like home. Like, there was still so many things that I wanted, and so I just sort of went on this journey of, you know, I studied stage acting at the ACT Summer Training Congress. And when I was there, I studied, one of our classes was, you know, it was an 8-9 hour a day program. And one of our classes was clown with Letitia Bartlett. And I was really into it. I thought it was wild. And I just felt like, oh, this is so physical. You know, I'm sweating. I want to understand comedy better. I want to understand bigger characters more. You know, there was something that really drew me to it, and she mentioned the Clown Conservatory, so I signed up.
Sounds all right.
No, that's all right. Well, so I auditioned, I should say. You don't just sign up. I auditioned for the Clown Conservatory from taking that class. And
what did you do as your piece?
Oh, I brought in a bunch of little pieces, like silly stuff. You know, I didn't know anything about clown at the time, so let me try to remember. You know, I think that I brought in, one thing was like a monologue for this goofy character I'd come up with who was like a waitress. Like, she talked really up here like this, and she kind of did this little weird skip when she walked. And so I think I did a monologue with her where I took his order in a really goofy way and made a bunch of mistakes. And then I think I did another one where, with a shoe, I can't remember, like, there was a shoe on the floor, and I was like, "Is that your shoe?" And he was like, "No, that's not my shoe." And I can't remember what happened. It was something very goofy where I ended up trying to take the shoe at the same time as him and maybe bumping heads or something. I can't remember exactly, but I brought in just a couple little things that I thought maybe were silly. And, you know, I don't know if he did the same thing with you as he did with me, but he, in the audition, it's a long audition. He asked you lots of questions. He had me climb up on top of his shoulders and stand in a 2-high, which for me, I'd never done acrobatics or anything like that. So the fact that he was asking me to stand on his shoulders was absolutely insane.
Yeah, I don't believe he did that with me.
Yeah,
I'm a bit bigger than you are.
You are a bit bigger than me.
We may have done like a Risley or something, but
yeah.
I don't believe we did a 2-high.
Yeah. So it was a pretty awesome audition. Like, I have to say, of all the auditions I've ever done, that one was like an experience.
Oh my God, it was one of the worst auditions I've ever been on.
Oh.
Peggy hated me. Peggy Ford, who was a goddess and wonderful and an incredible clown and run right. But my impression of that audition was that she hated me. At one point, she turned and started staring out the window.
Oh.
It was such a bad audition.
Oh, no.
I'm really surprised I made it in myself.
That's so funny. You know, I didn't feel like I necessarily did a good audition. What I mean to say is that the experience of the audition for me was enjoyable. I didn't feel like I knocked his socks off or anything.
I definitely felt like I did not bring... but I mean, I wasn't adequately prepared, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, my background history as a performer up to that point was barroom professional wrestling. We did professional wrestling on a rock and roll wooden stage.
Oh, that's awesome.
In a punk rock bar for a couple of years.
Oh, that's great.
And I did that as a clown character, so I'm wearing a yama and a fright wig and hitting people with pies and throwing big 5-gallon buckets of splosh onto the audience. And
right.
Just,
so what did you do for the audition?
Oh, you know, I did this whole thing where I believe I discovered and then did a tango piece with an inflatable sex doll. But it's supposed to be something that you've done for audiences a number of times, and I had done it for like one person once.
Right,
just to prep for this.
Oh, yeah, I'd never done this stuff for anyone.
I wanted extra skills, so I like taught myself the concertina. I could play one piece really well, and I learned to punch a nail through a piece of wood, like as a strongman thing, which I absolutely cannot do now.
That's right. You had to bring in special skills. I can't even remember what I brought in for special skills.
It was not a good audition. Like, I've had some amazing auditions, and Jeff was super. Like, I think Jeff wanted me, and Peggy just didn't see it. I think Peggy came around because I had a really good friendship with Peggy, and I love her dearly. Love her dearly. But in that audition, I don't think I impressed her very much. And again, we were talking about this momentarily, so we'll come to it now. There was improv in the audition, and improv was not my bag. In fact, only until the last couple of years have I really been able to embrace it as a performer in any way. I spent 2 years at Bats in the you know the one advanced class they had at the time, taking it over and over again, and I just could not make it work back then. But before then, there was improv in that I had to sell them a folding chair, using nothing but the letters of the alphabet.
Yes.
And that's actually where I lost Peggy, because I started beating myself for the head with it. Because, you know, wrestling, you do that, you know, knew how to do it without causing any injury.
Yeah.
And they did not like that.
Well, they meaning Peggy.
The improv, I don't think Jeff liked that part very much. Improv is a big part of your background. That came before the Clown Conservatory.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. How that fits both in your timeline and into the work that you do now.
Yeah, you know, well, improv, you could say, you know, it's a skill that you could use for anything, even just sitting here talking with you, walking down the street. I mean, anything you do, improv is a part of it. For me, it was kind of like so challenging to me, because I couldn't really make sense of how do you know when you're making a scene, what does a scene consist of, like, you know, and it's still a little bit baffling to me, to be honest, but I think that in studying it, I learned so many things, one of which is the nature of good storytelling. You know, the beginning, middle, the end, how to follow one thing to the next and not get ahead of yourself, how to follow the emotions and advancement of the plot is less important than the emotions, but also just sort of forgiving yourself when you make a mistake. Relating to the audience is such a big part of improv. Just sort of being able to incorporate anything that happens. If someone gets up in the middle of my show and walks to the bathroom across the stage, you know, I mean, even little things like that where it doesn't seem like I'm incorporating it into the performance itself, it is very helpful. And I studied improv for, studied/performed, I consider it the same thing, probably like 7 to 10 years. Yeah, about 10 years studying and performing.
So is that with Bats, or is that elsewhere?
I did a lot with Bats, and then I did a lot of private classes with teachers.
Bats is Bay Area theater sports. They've been in San Francisco for decades.
Yeah, they're great.
You said you did a lot with private teachers?
Lots with private teachers, and then I was in a couple of groups that I performed in, and I performed with Bats, not as the main stage company, but the main stage company would go and do little gigs, and they would have some of the student body come with, and I was considered, I guess, more in the student body, so I would do gigs with them, and I was in a group at the time called Double Entendre, which I was a founding member of, but also, Secret Improv Society, which is still ongoing right now down Powell and Sutter Street. I forget the name of the theater, the Shelton Theater.
Where Stageworks used to be.
Yeah.
Three theaters on top of each other.
So I was an ongoing guest member with them for a bit. So, and honestly...
I believe I saw a show of that with you in it. Now that you mentioned it, I believe I saw an improv show that you were in at the Shelton Theater, so that must have been
great.
Secret Improv Society.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. So I think that improv also is what kind of led me back to the theater and got me really intrigued in clown once I got there, because you do space object work in improv. There are no props, it's all mime. So when I got to and I love mime. I mean, I really took to it. It was like I was fascinated by it. I wanted to study with the great mimes, but I didn't want to move to France and wasn't sure how to do it, but I just sort of had a natural gift for it. And so when I started doing clown, Jeff kept saying to me, he would let me come in with ideas that were mime-based, but then he would say, clown is very much based in the physical objects. It's about what happens when you encounter the physical objects. And I was like, no, I can knock over a mime trash can just like I can knock over a real trash can. I really couldn't get it in my head until I went through the program and understood, there is a comedy, and there is a separate comedy to the what happens with actual objects,
Well, there's also a removal of a layer of separation, and I don't mean this in a bad way, of pretense when there's an actual thing there.
Yes.
This is not about your skill.
Yes,
when you're knocking over that mime
much
garbage
more
can, it's
natural.
about your skill. When you're knocking over the real garbage can, it's about your failure, as opposed to you showing what failure looks like.
Yes.
So I can see where that. I mean, I've never had that dilemma myself. I'm not a mime.
It was a huge dilemma for me, I have to say, Abraham, because I just wanted to do the mime. I was like, we had mime class in clown school. Why can't I do the mime? I can find a way to make this clown. But it really behooved me that he pushed me in that direction, because I learned so much more as a mime from working with the comedy around actual objects, and as an actor too,
Well, I find that people who studied acting before going into clown, at least looking at young clowns, new clowns, when I was going through the program in the years after it, the ones who'd studied acting before had a much better sense of commitment to the emotion of the moment than people who went clown into acting in that direction. Have you noticed something like that? Do you feel that one supports the other more than the other?
I mean, I think that they both support each other, but having acting as a background, it's tempting to say would behoove you, perhaps. I mean, either way, if you acquire both skills in whichever order you acquire them, I think it would be great. But having the acting as a background, because you are going to be doing acting and clowning, right? Whereas you might not be doing clowning per se in acting.
And the flip side of that is, while acting will give you that commitment to the moment and the emotion, clown is about honesty, and acting is about lying. You're trying to find a way to make it real, a way to make it true for you in that moment. But an actor is presenting a kind of falsehood.
It's interesting because to me they both feel equally false. I can see, though, theoretically what you mean, like that when you're a clown, you're an aspect of yourself. But
and you're much more of an actor than I am, so you have a better perspective on it than I do.
Yeah, I mean, certainly some roles feel much more removed than others. But when you're doing it effectively, or not even effectively, when you're really in it, you found yourself in the role. So
it's finding yourself in it. It's finding the truth of what you're doing in what you're doing for you yourself, as opposed to just taking the lines and making them believable.
Yeah.
So you went improv for many, many years, including the time that you were at the clown school.
Mm-hmm.
That led to producing your own performances, producing your own work. How did you make that transition from clown to improv to one-woman show?
Yeah, so, well, it was improv, then clown, and then I did the mime school. And then I got out of mime school, and I still felt lost. I felt like I had these tool bags that all related to each other, and that I was, really adept with movement and comedy and acting, but I didn't feel a draw to go find work in any of those ones. And I think I went through sort of a lost period, and I don't know why I did this. I was in a pretty deep depression because, as an artist, you're between things. I don't know. For me, I get depressed, and something led me. I think somebody had mentioned they had taken a class at the Marsh, so I went to the Marsh and I decided to take a class. It was one of the few acting things I hadn't done, and I'd never seen a solo show. It's not like I knew what solo performance was. The Marsh is the premier venue in the Bay Area for solo performing, and so I signed up for a class, and I called them and I said, there are 3 teachers here. Which one should I take? And they said, well, the guy on the phone said, well, I don't know. I've never taken that one personally, but my understanding is that Anne Randolph will hold your hand and really sort of guide you through it. David Ford will just sit back and won't hold your hand, He makes you do it yourself, and then Charlie's somewhere in between. And while I love to have my hand held, and I also love a challenge, so I went with David, the cold option, and I don't know. I guess the rest is history. I mean, I took his class, and it was really difficult because there's writing involved, right? I mean, even with clown, you have to write. You're writing your own bits, but it's a lot more on your feet. But this was sitting and writing, because at the end of the class we had to present something by ourselves on stage, our solo performance excerpt, and so it was an emotional experience. But the thing that I came up with was this perfect amalgamation of all of my skills, and it knocked people off. It blew people away, and it was a bigger response than I had ever gotten before, and I felt like I immediately had this. I don't know. People treated me in that community like this is where you belong, and I felt like I belonged there. So that's where I've been ever since, and it really is. It really has been perfect for me because I never felt like I was strictly a clown or strictly an actor or strictly, a mime. I never wanted to be. I wanted them to work together, and so I found something.
And this led to Tipped and Tipsy out of this process, like directly out of the class. Is this what you were working on then, and it just continued to develop into Tipped and Tipsy, or was there something else before that?
So my first class, I did a show that was about my sister and I getting caught shoplifting when we were kids, and I did it in the style of a noir, and so afterwards, David Ford walked up to me and he said, "God, that went great." He told me all the things he thought that went really wonderful about it, and I said, "Oh, goody. So what do you think comes next in the story? Should I do a story from after we got caught? Maybe, there's this thing that happened to me in high school after that about where I was hoarding pets in my closet." And he said, "Sure, let's have a look at that." So I did that. I took another class, and then that was culminated in a performance, and I did this piece that as a fairy tale, but it was about this time when I was sneaking pets into my closet as a kid. And he said, "Oh, that went wonderful. We talked about how good it was, and the audience loved it." And I said, "Great, so we can squish these together. And now I can do a third genre. We could just do this full-length show of different genres over my life." And he said, "What else you got?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, what else? Okay, let's come up with a few ideas." I said, "I don't know. I'd been a bartender to support my artistic habit since I was a kid." So I said, "Well, I could definitely talk about the bar." And he said, "Yeah, let's hear about that." And I was like, "All right." So I took the class again, and I did a piece about the bar. And, I've never been comfortable doing the traditional solo format where you speak as yourself as a narrator and tell your own story. So, in those first two stories, while they were my own, I kind of obscured them and I made them into sort of fictional characters. Well, this one was even more so because it was totally fiction. I mean, I was making it all up. It was based on my experience, but not like on a particular thing. And it went really, really well again. And I said, so what do you think? Can I turn this into a full-length thing? And he said, yeah, this is the one. So, I've just followed his advice. And so then I just started working with him one-on-one and finished the show and got it into a few festivals, and it started getting good reviews and good press, and it started getting a following, and one thing led to another. And then I won Best of Fest at the San Francisco Fringe, which led to a run at the Marsh. They ended up getting extended because it sold so well. And then from there, people started seeking out my expertise in solo performance and in performance in general. So I developed this coaching practice sort of out of thin air, which was the biggest gift. One of those things as an artist that you don't see coming, but it's been such a gift. So I've been able to scale back bartending and really just perform and coach. So that was my first show, Tipped and Tipsy, which I still perform here and there, but I've been working on my next show since then.
This is a noir show.
Yes, yeah.
So tell me about that.
So my new show is called A Fatal Step. It's a killer one-woman noir. And, it's funny. I'd been touring Tipped and Tipsy for a while, and I went to David Ford, who's, my guru, and I said to him, I don't know, I think it's time to start a new show, but I don't really know what I want to write about. He said, well, whatever, do you have any ideas? And I said, the only idea that keeps coming to me is like a noir. I really love the genre of noir. And he said, okay, good. So is there anybody you want to kill? And I said, what do you mean? He said, there's got to be someone in your life you want to kill. Who do you want to kill? And I said, well, there's a few people I might like to kill, but, the one that comes to mind is somebody that I kind of feel like people here might know, and I'm a little uncomfortable talking about it. So he let me obscure it. But, from there I just started writing, and this crazy noir unfolded. So it's been quite a process.
You've performed it yet? Or?
Yes. So I finished the first draft of it in time for the Rogue Festival. So last October I had probably 15 minutes of this show, and I applied for a festival just because I was needing a deadline. I was dragging my feet a little on it. And I get into the Rogue Festival, and I'm like, uh-oh, now I'm in trouble. So it's October, the Rogue Festival's March 1st. And I have 15 minutes written. I have to finish writing a 60-minute show. I've got to learn how to act it. I've got to find costume. I've got to do the marketing, the publicity, all of this stuff, fix the website, right? So it's been a little crazy since last October, but I did get my first draft finished by March, and it did really well at the Rogue Festival. It got a lot of buzz. It sold out several of the shows. People were loving it, and so now when I brought it back, and I'm back to work with it with my director, my developer David Ford, but also my director Mark Kenward. And we're just working on it and polishing it and, getting pieces stronger and better. And then I'm taking it on tour next month up to Canada and then back down to Indianapolis. And then I'm waiting to hear if I got into the San Francisco Fringe. I'm on the wait list. It's first come, first serve. Or no, it's a hat draw, and I got first on the wait list. So somebody has to drop out.
So how does booking a tour like that work? When you're doing a theatrical show in multiple cities and in another country, how do you build that kind of tour?
It's so crazy. I mean, first you have to get into the festivals, and the funny thing about these festivals is that most people don't know is the majority of them are a hat draw. So you pay money by a deadline, and you give them a title to your show, and then they draw out of a hat. And if you get drawn, then you pay to be in the festival. So that's the first thing. You have to apply to, all these festivals, and there's certain ones that make money and certain ones that don't. So you have to decide if you're going to prioritize making money. And most of the money is in Canada. They have a very loyal theater audience. I mean, they eat it up. So these festivals, people fly in on the weekends and during the week from out of town. That's how big of an event it is, So it's really great to perform in Canada, and then there's a handful of good ones in the States too. So you have to get into the festivals, and then you've got to create all of your marketing, all of your publicity, and all of that. And you book your own tickets, but you take 100% at the door. So you do have the potential of making a decent amount of money. If let's say there's 100 seats and you're in an average house, and the tickets tend to be on average $10, so that's $1,000 a night if you sell out, and you get publicity from it, right? You get reviews from critics, and then you bring that stuff home and hopefully get a local run at home.
And that's what you did with Tipped and Tipsy as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I toured it before and after the run. At the Marsh, yeah, the local run.
So let's go back to your time at Flying Actor. Tell me about that. Tell me what that was like, because I experienced the Clown Conservatory for a couple of years, but Flying Actor wasn't part of my background.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I was there on their first year, so it was a baby at the time. But have you studied with either James or Lenny? They're just brilliant men. They're phenomenal movers and actors, and they just have such wildly different perspectives from each other and from anyone else you've ever met. And it was a hard year. These year-long intensives they're intense. You got to be a crazy person to sign up for this stuff.
You had some really great people in your class. You had Luz and Molly.
No, that was the year after.
Oh, that was the year after?
Yeah. My class had Koi, Audrey Spinazzola, Kurt Bodden, who later did a solo show at the Marsh as well. That was a big hit. Steve Seabrook, Better Than You. Nick Dixon, I believe, was the year after. I had Gilkey's guy. Alec was in ours.
Jones,
yes.
Or Jones Trujillo. I'm not sure how it goes.
And Joan Howard was in the. Yeah, it was the first year. Yeah, I think you're thinking of either the second year or the third year.
Right. It wasn't around for long, and I tend to.
Yes. It was short.
Lasting, project.
Yeah.
You put together a piece that you performed at my festival one year with Audrey Spinazzola and a young man who was a clown whose name I just cannot remember right now.
Oh God!
I got some great photos of him and Audrey and Koi together.
I don't know why his name is slipping my. I just saw him like 2 months ago. Jeez.
Well, you can be embarrassed. I don't have to. I haven't seen him.
Yeah, no, I really ought to know.
So, and that's one of the few straight clown pieces that I've got to see you do.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you saw me through the Clown Conservatory doing clown stuff, but you mean outside of there?
Yeah. So, and this was a musical piece.
Yeah.
That you did. And again, obviously, Audrey's going to have a lot of influence on that because that is her foundation and background. But what led you there?
Well, I've always been musical. I toured with a punk band in the UK before. So I dropped out of art school and moved to the UK and toured with a punk band.
Was that the art school here in San Francisco?
Yeah. So I did that. Then when I came back, I started with the acting. So I already had that in my background, and Audrey had this ukulele, which I'd been playing guitar with my band, but she had this ukulele, and she'd let me, strum it a little. And I'm not a great musician. I don't know what to call the kind of musician I am. I'm the kind of person that you can hand me an instrument and show me how to play a song, and I now know that song on that instrument, unless I put it down for a week, and then it's gone. So I can just sort of pick up an instrument and play it well enough to be part of something. So that's what happened with the ukulele. She taught me, we learned the song we decided on, and I wanted to do it too. I wanted to do a musical piece. So she was thrilled because she was the only musician in our class, I think.
Well, she's an amazing multi-instrumentalist.
Oh yeah.
Clown.
Oh yeah.
I think she's running part of the program up at Sanka now.
Oh, that's great. I love the girl.
So,
and she was like 10 years younger than me at the time.
Yeah,
I mean, she still is, obviously, but
one of the youngest people who ever went to the conservatory.
My goodness.
So let's talk a little bit about the time in which you were really focused on clown.
Yeah.
What was your first outside of the conservatory? Did you get to perform clown much after that? Did you stay with clown, or did you go straight into the hybrid amalgam improv clown actor writer world?
I mean, right after the clown conservatory, I did the mime school, so I was still doing clown bits in the mime school. We were still creating
all the work you did as a clown, what is the piece that you're the most proud of? Or a piece you're most proud of, not necessarily the piece.
Yeah, I mean, I loved doing the ukulele trio. Was it a trio at that point? No, I think Audrey and I did a ukulele duo. That might have been what you're thinking of. And I'm pretty proud of that piece. I think it came out really good. Where I was such the one and she was such the two, and we were covering, I think, an AC/DC song. I'm kind of confusing a few of them because we did a few rock and roll covers that we turned into clown, but it might have been I Want to Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. Is that AC/DC? Anyway, we did it on ukulele, and my character kind of is trying to take the limelight and be the center of attention, and she's just trying to keep the thing going, and I keep trumping her, and eventually I just go off on this crazy solo where I'm like squealing and ripping on the ukulele and all over the place in front of her, and then I think she smacks me in the face with the ukulele, and then she takes the final verse of the song and finishes it. So I was proud of that piece. I thought it was fun. It felt very true to both of our characters, and people liked it, and it was it was a blend of a lot of things that influenced me too, right? Like my love of punk rock. Like I got to stick it in there.
So, in your entire career, over 10 years, as a professional performer, most of us have day jobs too, so but it still counts. What is one of the weirdest gigs you've ever had to do?
Weird gigs. God, I was thinking. I almost think I've blocked out some of the weirder ones because they can be just so awkward. God. I mean, one that comes to mind, but I think the only reason it's coming to mind is because I just listened to another one of your podcasts, and it's kind of like his. But I put together a improv group and an improv show because I got hired by a synagogue to do a Jewish Christmas. Jews have nothing to do on Christmas. I'm a Jew. I can vouch for that. So they had this big dinner at the synagogue for people, for entertainment purposes, and brought us in as the improv group. So I don't know how weird that was, but it was fun and quirky, to get people going in that.
So when we look back at the influences that built the kind of performer you are, not just as a clown, but the work that you do now, the work that you write, the acting and improvisation and clown that you do, what are some of the media that most influence you? Television, movies, music?
I love stuff like Tarantino's style, the way he really borrows from different genres and has these big, bold characters. And the musicality to his work, not just the actual soundtrack, that too, but also just sort of the musicality to some of his pieces really influences me. I think that my solo shows are I approach them with a strong cinematic aesthetic. And so I'd say things like Tarantino or even Oliver Stone, some of his work, Natural Born Killers type of stuff, what I love about Natural Born Killers is the way he sort of splices these things in there that aren't necessarily part of the narrative, and there's all of this satire in it. That I think that kind of work has had a huge influence on me. And then the old school noirs. I love looking at the dark and the light in a story and in characters and really exploring their most vulnerable, secrets and their most vulnerable side. So I think a lot of old films have that, and just this cinematic quality to old westerns, even the noirs, westerns, all of the black and whites.
Well, amongst all this, what's something that you think is generally underrated that you wish people had more appreciation for in terms of the media that you care about?
Well, honestly, solo performing, I think, is something that still I say to people in the mainstream, and they say, so what is that? Is that like stand-up comedy? Same thing with improv. I'll say, oh, well, yeah, I used to do improv. Improv, what do you mean, like stand-up comedy? So the mainstream knows what stand-up comedy is. That's what they know when they think about something that's not a play or a musical. They know that there's stand-up comedy. I'm like, well, no, my solo work is not stand-up comedy. There is stand-up comedy in it. There are jokes, but it's more storytelling. But it's not like I'm just standing and telling you a story. So I always tell people it reads like a play with multiple characters, only I play all the characters. And then their eyes get kind of big. And I say, yeah, it's weird. But, for so many of us in the art world, we know what solo is. We've seen solo shows. We're very well aware of what improv is, but a lot of the mainstream isn't. And it's, I just hope to see I feel like it's our duty as performers in this period of time more than any other to keep people going to live theater in any capacity, whether it be solo, whether it be clown, whether it be a traditional play or a Broadway musical, because there's something so magical that you do not get on the TV and you do not get from a movie theater. And there's plenty of magic on TV and in movie theaters, but this is different. This is different, and it's special, and it's magical, and it takes effort to get to it. And I hope that we can instill the motivation in future generations and millennials to continue the tradition of going to live theater, because it has so much to offer us. That live interaction, seeing somebody vulnerable like that on stage, and the fact that people's imaginations just go crazy during these shows. I don't have any props in my show. It's all mime, and it's not mime like I'm up there like Marcel Marceau. It's natural looking mime. You know what I'm doing when I'm doing it, and it's just there to serve the story. But people tell me afterwards the things that they saw, like, oh, I loved at the end she does this backflip. I didn't do a backflip at the end, but they saw that. The imagination just has so much room to grow, and that happens so much in the live theater, I think. So I think it's whether or not it's underrated. I'd love to see more people. I see that as our duty. It's our duty to keep that going, to keep young people engaged. Because the older generation knows, right? It's the younger ones don't know.
So before we wrap up, because we're getting close to the end, what is a project or role that you've always wanted to do, but due to logistics or budget or what have you, haven't been able to approach yet? What is it you really want to do?
Honestly, what I'm doing, the reason I've gone down this route of solo performance is that the shortcoming that acting has is I have to audition for parts that I look the part of, that people will cast me as. Well, guess what? I don't want to play your average, edgy, pretty girl. I mean, that's all I'm going to get. Maybe I'll get a wicked stepmother here and there, or a drug addict here and there. But let's be honest. This is what I'm going to get. I want to play men. I want to play ugly people. I want to play the ex-boxer who's been punched 50 times in the head. I want to play, the male lead, the Humphrey Bogart. I want to play all of these characters. And that's what I loved about improv. So with solo performing, I get to cast myself however the hell I choose. I get to play all those roles. So honestly, I'd say that I am writing the roles for myself, and that's what's so great about this. I'd love to have a bit more money so that I could have bigger tech, and put it up in a way that was just, Broadway has money behind it. That's why it looks so good. Mine's very DIY, and it looks very professional. You wouldn't think it looks DIY, but it'd be great to have more money behind it so that I could, add more special effects, so to speak.
All right. 2 more questions.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about the noir that you're working on right now, which is called
A Fatal Step.
A Fatal Step. It was a fatal something. I just want to make sure I said
Yeah, thank you.
A Fatal Step. Where can people find you and your work?
Well, so you can go to my website, jillvice.com. You can find me on Facebook. That's a great way to follow me.
And that's Vice, Vice.
Vice, yes. Find me on Facebook. Follow me, Jill Vice. I think it's Performer. You'll find it. Right now, so the way solo works is you develop it, right? So you have to put it in front of an audience. We need audiences to know how this stuff is landing. So I'm going to be touring it this year. I'll be in Winnipeg later next month, and the following month I'll be in Indianapolis. If I get off the wait list for San Francisco, I'll be there, and then hopefully I'll be bringing it back to the Marsh either later this year or early next year is what I'm hoping for, to do a run at the Marsh on Valencia Street. So I think that's, I do excerpts at Stageworks at Solo Sundays, which is a wonderful little series that Bruce Packman puts together. It's also on Valencia Street in the Mission District.
Yeah, Stageworks.
Yeah.
It's my favorite theater, and they go so far to support
absolutely. Ty, the owner, wonderful.
They are the theater that does the most to support circus in San Francisco.
They're incredible. And so, they put together this show Solo Sundays, which happens twice a month, and it shows excerpts from different solo performers. So that's a great place to go and check it out. And I'm there frequently along with a lot of my colleagues and clients. And just look out for the show later, at the end of this year or early next year. Yeah.
Okay. One last question. If you could tag 3 other clowns to be on this podcast after you, who would they be?
3 people that I think would be great on this podcast. I think Joan Howard has a lot of interesting stuff to say. She's really trippy. So I'd say her, and I don't know, what about Kelly Holly? She's pretty cool. I don't know if she's still around, but she does some really awesome work, and she is committed to this craft, and she's pretty unusual with her va-va-voom. And, well, Gilkey, of course, but I'm sure you're after him already.
Yeah. All right, Jill, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. And everyone check out Jill's Fatal Step and information about what she's doing and when at jillvice.com. Thank you for joining us today on Ridiculous Life of a Clown. This program, as always, is made possible by your support through our Patreon, which you can find through www.picklewater.com. Also, please join us this coming January 27th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at Stageworks Theater in San Francisco for a huge circus gala featuring clowns, comedians, and burlesque dancers, all in benefit of Planned Parenthood. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.